Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about practices and lessons. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Hi Frederick, thank you for the videos. There is some very valuable advice in them. Keep it up. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that you enjoy them. Is there any advice that you were given in the beginning of your career that you overlooked in the moment, but later on you realized that it was actually true? So many things, I would say. I actually just got home from a business trip uh, up to the capital in this little country of mine, and I went there with my now manager and old mentor, who was one of the two people who gave me most of the career advice that was high quality in the start of my career, who I at the time, and I mean I still look up to him, and he's probably a better software developer than I will ever be. But the thing is that these days when we talk, we've finally sort of I think we've reached a point where I understand sort of I understand the lessons that he and the other mentors that I had at the time. I was extraordinarily fortunate when I started to be a programmer, because I got into a company where I had some very experienced people. At the time, I was in the philosopher phase of my career, and I didn't really understand some of these lessons that to me sounded, well, sort of counterintuitive to what I had been taught, or sort of what I had convinced myself was true about software development. So to summarize, because I hope that you understand that there are a lot of lessons that I have learned over the years, like everything from coding patterns to approaches to problems, how to think about things, how to structure work processes. There's so much. I could probably write a little manual on all the things that I've found to be very useful that I didn't really understand in the beginning. But the main one, I would say, is keep it simple, stupid. Now, that might seem so obvious that you just sort of groan and go, oh yeah, it's going to be one of these high level things that, yeah, just means that you shouldn't make things complicated. And I know, because it's sort of how I felt when I got these lessons from him and from the other coworkers that I had, because at the time I was in the philosopher stage. And for those of you who are new to software development, usually you will see that most software developers go through a few phases during their career. So usually they start out as a junior software developer who's just trying to get the code to work, and then they progress and they get a little bit more comfortable working, and they start getting fancy with their solutions. And this is usually where the predatory tech talkers and tech gurus who get their claws into you, where you go to some conference somewhere and they convince you that using event sourcing with an all-functional backend is the way to go, and that's going to be the thing that's going to make you as successful as Google. And at that time you think, because you have just mastered how to just write the syntax correctly without having to look it up on Stack Overflow every 5 minutes, now you have convinced yourself that you know enough to tell what a good solution looks like and what a bad one looks like, and you know that this is more advanced than what you know. Therefore, of course, because you've understood that these people are experts, they are right, and this is what you should be going for. And when I was in that stage, at that time in IT, everything was microservices had just become a term. Everything was microservices. It was all about microservices. And of course, I went down that rabbit hole as well, just as I went down the functional programming rabbit hole and so forth. Now, I'm not in any way saying that these are not good practices, but what I am saying is that when you don't actually understand how to apply these things correctly and under what circumstances, it's, as an analogy that I like to use, is that you're using the wrong tool for the problem. Because if you think, at least the way that I suggest that you think about software development, is that you want a solution that stands in proportion to the problem that you are solving. And a classic example is people who might think that they want to set up a very simple WordPress site or something very simple like a static website to sort of showcase their CV, or a personal website or something like that. If you wanted to do that when I was at that stage in my career, then I would have told you, well, you of course need to put that in a Docker container, and of course you're going to have to run that on a multi-cloud solution, and of course you're going to have to use Kubernetes, because you should split that out into microservices modules so that you have something serving up the UI and then a load balancer that can connect to the different backend APIs, so it's going to scale well. Now if you said that to me today, I would say yeah. Or you could just make a static website and serve it up with the basic, you could basically put it on a bucket now. Like these days you don't even have to set up your own web server, when you can be done in a day instead of paying for all this extra work and doing all this extra work and all this extra maintenance. And that's what I'm talking about. Maybe a simpler example would be if you want to water your plants at home. Sure, you could call up the fire department and ask to borrow one of their fire hoses to do that, but it's probably not the right tool. Maybe just a glass of water or like a pitcher of water would be suffice, because it's a proportionate solution, right? And this was something that was very difficult for me to understand, and I've done all these sort of mistakes that you can imagine, guys. I've implemented a basic CRUD application where I try to take into account what will happen if the database goes down. And this was for a school project. I almost failed that school project because I almost didn't make the deadline, because when I was done I thought, wow, you know what would be cool? If the connection goes down, maybe I can sort of cache, like I can switch over to an in-memory solution while the system is running, and just keep on adding to the memory and store the records in memory, and then flush them to the database when the connection is back. And then one of my friends or my schoolmates trolled me and said, what happens when the memory goes out? And I go, yeah, what happens then? Maybe I can write to the disk, but if I don't have a disk, what do I do then? And sort of I just went down this rabbit hole and just kept on making it more and more complicated. And today I can safely say that I'm no longer the sort of person who will, at least I'd like to think I'm not, the sort of person who's going to try to overcomplicate things. At the same time, I don't think that you should be a conservative and say, nothing new is good, because it's not about new not being good. It's about you understanding what a good solution looks like for the specific situation that you are in. That's something that I did not understand when I started out. I was very skeptical to the advice that I got, because there's so many guys and girls on the Tech Talks, guys, who will tell you how to do all the things, and maybe they are right for their solution, and that's the thing that is tricky. How do you know if the thing that they're telling you is right for you? Well, usually that's where experience comes in. So what I want you to take away from this is that I've learned many things that I ignored when I was a junior or mid-level, or it might be a mid-level still. I'm not sure exactly what these terms refer to many times. But the thing that I can say is that keep it simple, stupid is for sure the one that I overlooked the most. And it sounds obvious, guys, but it really isn't. I promise you, before your career is over, you're going to find yourself trying to make generic code and finding that you made a generic solution and it's only used in one single place, and it's not actually generic. Trying to make something reusable that's also only used once and isn't really reusable, or trying to do something fancy that later turns out to become more and more ugly as you go along. And you're going to find other people more often than not, guys, who have done this, and that's going to cause you so much headache. And I promise you, after a few of those projects where you have to come to a second-hand code base and fix all the clever things that people have done that are more advanced than they need to be, you're going to start understanding why simple in many cases is better. Have a great day.